Hi, boys and girls. This is Chapter 8, Lesson 6. The title of this lesson is Write and Graph Inequalities. So we're going to learn those two things. How do we write inequalities from a real situation, and how do we graph inequalities? This is the 6th note page for Chapter 8. There's one more lesson after today, so there's two more, including this one. Let's get started with how do you write inequalities. So you're going to start with words or a situation from real life. So I'm going to write over here that we're starting with words. And most of you have been to some kind of amusement park ride, Disneyland, or something similar where there's a height restriction for a given ride. So here is what you might see for a ride, a carnival ride or a ride at a fair, is a sign that says this: you must be over 44 inches tall to ride. So I'm going to write down that in words. You must be over 44 inches tall to ride. You must be over 44 inches tall to ride. So that is an inequality that is written in words. So we're starting with words today, an inequality that's written in words. So the first thing you're going to do is figure out, well, what is the variable in that inequality? So I'm going to write that next, the variable. So when you read this, what's the variable that you're measuring or that could be changing? Well, you're talking about how tall you are. That's the variable that you're going to pick. So you could say H for height, T for how tall you are. It's up to you. You could say I for inches if you wanted. But again, you get to assign it. We're going to assign H, or I'm going to choose, rather, H is the height. H is the height. The height of the person that's walking up to that sign. So you first read the situation in words, and then you define the variable, and I'm going to say that H is the height. So now I'm going to go back to the words. So what are some key words in here? You must be over 44 inches tall to ride. So really you've got to go back to the words and really pick out, what do these words actually mean? What's the meaning of the words? And so the next thing you're going to do is work on symbols, translating the inequality using symbols. So we're going to use the inequality symbols. I'll just write them all right here. So it could be greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. We got to figure out which one of these is going to work for our situation. So when I look at this sign, you must be over 44 inches tall to ride. One thing you can do is just start to think about the numbers that are involved with this, and start with a number that it's given. So I'm going to write some numbers over here. Can you be 44 inches tall? Let's say you're a kid, you walk up to this ride, and you're exactly 44 inches. You must be, is this kid going to be able to get on the ride? If it says this, you must be over 44 inches tall to ride. Kid walks up to the sign, and he's 44 inches tall. The answer is no. He's not going to be able to ride because it says you must be over 44 inches tall. So this kid is not going to be able to ride. What about a kid who's 43 inches tall? Well, clearly no, because you have to be over. What if a kid walks up and he or she is just barely over 44 inches tall? They're 44.1 inches tall. Are they going to get to go on the ride? They are. And same with a kid who's 45 inches tall. So these kids are going to get on the ride. It's going to work. So now I'm going to write an inequality. Your height has to be over 44 inches tall. Your height has to be greater than 44 inches. This translates from that scenario, those words. So, and now, once you think you have the inequality written down in math using symbols like this, you then want to go back and test your numbers that you thought about. Put in 44.1 in for H. Is that greater than 44? It is. Put in 44. Does that work? Is 44 greater than 44? No. That 44 does not work in here, so it's crossed out. Does 43 work? No, it doesn't. Does 45 work? And everything greater is going to work. So, this sign, you must be over 44 inches tall to ride. They could just put up a sign that says this: your height has to be greater than 44 inches. If you could translate inequalities, you could walk up and just see that sign right there. Your height has to be more than 44 inches. But of course they're going to put it in words because not everybody is as good as translating inequalities as you are. Okay, next. Another example. Okay, so we're going to start with words. And our next inequality says you can spend no more than 75 bucks. You are going shopping and you've got a gift card or money. You have $75. So you can spend no more than $75. That's all you've got. You've got $75 in your pocket. You cannot spend over that. If you try to spend over that, you're going to be sunk. You don't have that amount of money. So there's our words. So we start thinking about our words. Next thing we're going to do is come up with a variable. So when you read this inequality, you can spend no more than $75. Think about what's changing or what are you measuring, and it's the amount of money you can spend. So you get to assign a variable. If the problem might tell you use M for the amount of money you can spend. But if it didn't say that, you get to pick. You could say M for money, C for cash, G for the gift card you've got. Whatever, any letter you want as long as you assign it. As long as you define what your variable is. So I'm going to say M, and I'm going to say that is the money M represents the money you can spend. That's our variable. Okay, so we've got our variable. Now we're going to start thinking about numbers, specific numbers. Can you spend $75? So is 75 okay? If your total came to exactly $75, would that be all right? Yes, it would be, because you have $75. You can spend no more than 75. So 75 is good. Could you spend 74? Well, sure, you'd get some change back. You could spend 73. Everything on down. You could spend $1. You'd get a bunch of change, but you can spend 75 and everything this way. As soon as it's 1 penny more, 75.01, you can't spend that because you wouldn't have enough. If that was your total, 75.01, you would not have enough. So all the numbers that way are going to be no good. So our inequality has to fit these numbers. It can be 75, 74, everything below that. So I'm going to start with my money I can spend. So think about what symbol is going to work in here. And again, you might get the wrong symbol, but what you're going to do is test it with these numbers and see if they fit. The amount of money you can spend has to be less than 75. So I'm going to start with this. The amount of money is less than 75. So does this work? Is 73 less than 75? Yes, it is. Does 74 work in here? Yes, it does. And everything below. If I just spent $5, could I do that? Is 5 less than 75? Yes. So far, so good. What about 75? When I put in 75 into this, is 75 less than 75? Well, the answer now is no. So now I have to think about this. Do I want to include 75? I do, because you can spend no more than 75, but that includes 75. I just would have no change back, but I could spend 75. So I'm going to adjust my inequality to this. The amount of money you can spend is less than or equal to 75. That part right there makes me include 75, and I do want to include 75 because no more than 75, those words, that is going to include 75. I just cannot go above. As soon as I get to 75.01, no good. So now we've got our inequality. So if you had 75 bucks and you're going to the store, somebody could show you this symbol right here. Well, here's how much you can spend at the store. The money you can spend has to be less than or equal to 75 because that's all you've got. So today's, when you're translating the steps, assign a variable and then write down numbers and figure out would they work or not. Try to come up with the inequality and then test your numbers to see if they work. And you might have to adjust. Okay, so that's the first part. That's writing inequalities. That's what we just did. We were writing inequalities. Next, we're going to switch gears and talk about graphing inequalities. Before we do that, though, here is your hidden treasure vocabulary word for Lesson 6. It is mixed number. So write that at the bottom of your note page, M-I-X-E-D, mixed, and then number, N-U-M-B-E-R. What is a mixed number? If you don't know, look it up. Use your glossary, use your Chromebook, write down the definition and an example, and you could be the hidden treasure winner. Mixed number. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is graph inequalities. So here we've got, there's an inequality. Your height has to be greater than 44. And this one, your money has to be less than or equal to 75. So now we're going to graph these two inequalities on a number line. So my big hint for graphing the inequalities is this. Hint. When you're saying the inequality for the variable, read the inequality as, for the variable, say the answers. And I'll explain that in our examples. Instead of saying the variable, replace the variable and say the answers. Okay, so I am going to go back to our two examples here. We're going to graph those two examples. So your height has to be greater than 44. So I'm going to start with a number line. And I'm going to put 44 in the middle of my number line. 44, 45, 46, and 43, 42. So now here's how we graph inequalities. Think about the numbers that work to make this true. Does 42 work in this inequality? Is 42 greater than 44? No, it's not. How about 43? Doesn't work. How about 45? Yes, 45 is greater than 44, so I'd put a dot right here. Does 46 work? It does. What about 45.1? Still works. So I'd be filling in all. What about 45 and a half? It works. What about 45 and 3/4? What about 46.2? 46.3? On all these are going to get filled in. Everything that way, because it's bigger. Anything I put in here that's this way is going to be more than 44, and it's going to work. So it's going to keep going this way. Now, what about 44? Can I put 44 into this inequality, and does that work? 44, is that greater than 44? The answer is no. 44 does not work. So what about 44.1? That does work. It's a little bit bigger than 44. So everything really close, anything that's just over 44 is going to work, but not 44. So I'm going to write this over here. I'm going to say not 44. And if I don't want to include 44, I'm going to leave it an open point. I'm going to leave it open. I am not going to fill it in. It is not included. So this circle right here on 44 is not filled in. Okay, I'm making a circle, but I am not filling it in. So here, this number line represents this inequality. The height, or the answers, remember I said think of the answers. The answers are greater than 44. Well, that's greater than 44. So is that, so is that, so is that, so is everything else that way. 44 is not greater than 44, so I do not want to include 44. If I don't want to include it, I'm leaving it an open point like that. Okay, let's graph the other example that we had. The amount of money you can spend is less than or equal to 75. So again, I'm going to make my number line. I'm going to put 75 in the middle. I'm going to count. There's my number line. Now I'm going to think about what fits in here. I can also go back and look at this. 73 works. That's an answer. 74. Everything below. So I know that 74 works. Everything below that is going to work. So I'm going to just make my, and this is an arrow because my answers keep going all the way down to a penny. I could spend a penny if I wanted to. But now think about 75. Can I spend exactly 75? The answer is yes, I can. So I'm going over here, I'm going to write yes. I'm going to write yes for 75. I want to include 75, so that is going to be a closed point. I'm going to close in and include that point. Okay, so on 75, do I want to include 75? Can I spend 75? Is that one of my answers? Is 75 an answer for 75 is less than or equal to 75? It is. So I'm going to shade in the point. And here is this inequality graphed. Your answers are less than or equal to 75. 75 does work, and everything less than that is one of your answers. Okay, so big ideas. This is new for most kids. This will take some practice. Just remember, open point means you're not including that point. Closed point means you are including that point. So that really comes down to this part right here. If it's greater than or less than, you're not going to include this. If it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you will be including that point and you will be filling it in. All right, that does it for lesson 6. One more lesson in this chapter. Again, start reviewing previous lessons, notes, and videos, and I'll see you soon for lesson 7.